Hurricane and storm surge warnings in effect for Tropical Storm Nicole. So Nicole has completed its transition to become a tropical cyclone and is now at 27.6 north, 73.1 west, getting closer to the northern Bahamas and eventually the east coast of Florida. A tropical storm now with winds of 50 miles per hour and an estimated central pressure of 992 millibars, moving west-northwest at 8 miles per hour at the moment, and it will accelerate gradually as it gets closer to the Bahamas. It will impact those islands tomorrow with hurricane force winds most likely, and then move into the central east coast of Florida by the later part of Wednesday. Here it is right now displayed on a map with its wind field, which is enormous in some of its quadrants, particularly on the northwestern side right now, but the eastern side still quite spread out there as well. Southwestern quadrant still yet to get any tropical storm force winds. Hurricane warning in effect for some of the northwestern Bahamas and for Boca Raton to Flagler-Volusia County line, Florida. It is currently 254 miles from Great Abaco, 318 from Nassau, 432 from West Palm Beach, 457 from Miami, and 571 from Tampa. There are also watches in effect. We didn't have enough space to fit it on our bottom bar here. Make sure you check your National Weather Service and National Hurricane Center for the latest warnings. We are looking at damaging winds from hurricane conditions on the northern Bahamas on Wednesday and along the coast of Florida by Wednesday night. This will be accompanied by a storm surge of up to 5 feet by the time the storm arrives along the east coast of Florida. So the primary hazards being those hurricane conditions and that storm surge potential, but rainfall will of course be there as well with up to 5 or 6 inches. Here's the expectations on the forecast for the next few days. The storm moving through the Bahamas there and then through Florida, possibly making a pass over Lake Okeechobee, possibly entering the Gulf of Mexico, but the NHC's latest cone now have it staying just about inland and then turning northeast and then really speeding up off towards the northeast by the later part of the week and dissipating quite early on now on day 4. There's the National Hurricane Center's cone on the left hand side and the latest estimates, which are still in decent consensus there for a 50 mile per hour intensity right now. The satellite estimates, funny enough, have gone down since yesterday and they're now hovering at around 45 miles per hour, but I think it's pretty clear cut that this storm is a little bit stronger, and that's been confirmed by Recon, which have supported 50 mile per hour winds. There's the cone, well not a cone, but the wind spread, the potential chances of tropical storm force winds, and they are of course rising all along that southeastern part of the United States and the northern Bahamas. It's pretty assured at this point that those areas are going to get tropical storm conditions up to Cape Canaveral and beyond. Take a look at this model run from the GFS showing the storm's trajectory in the next few days. A massive tropical storm wind field by the time it pushes inland, and then it starts to move northwards quite quickly and then northeastwards very quickly by that point. Will it get to hurricane status? It probably will at this point. We are expecting 75 miles per hour. We don't think it will get much stronger than that, if at all. 1 or 2 models suggesting a little bit higher, believable models that is. Of course, you have got the NAM 3 kilometer, which is going crazy as usual. And this is an idea of what the reflectivity might look like as this storm progresses, and you can see there it's continuing to get better organized right up until landfall, and then it starts to curve northwards, dragging along those bands with it as it continues through the eastern coast of the United States, with potentially some torrential rainfall over parts of the Appalachian Mountains and all along the east coast. So that's certainly something to look towards. It could be a big event for parts of the East Coast, especially those that have had a lot of rain. Taking a look at the expected rainfall amounts then, I don't have it on my screen here, but I believe that the expected totals are up to around 4 or 5 inches for quite a few areas. in Florida, but also all along the east coast and inland over the Appalachian Mountains, as I mentioned, and up along the New England region as well. We could be looking at some high amounts of rain. 5 or 6 inches, I think it was, for the northernmost islands of the Bahamas. We're particularly looking at Great Abaco and Grand Bahama, probably for the highest rainfall amount of the whole storm. So that's something to be concerned about, but generally we're looking at maybe up to 6 inches. Sea surface temperatures looking decent ahead of the storm as well, generally around 26 degrees. It's only just enough to sustain a tropical cyclone, but Nicole's already done that over those waters right now, and it will limit, of course, its intensification, but it also means that that wind field will remain very broad and will continue to broaden pretty much up until landfall. So we'll be looking at very widespread tropical storm force winds, but most areas won't get the very strongest winds, of course, which will be nearing hurricane status by the time it makes landfall. Here's the satellite imagery, and you can see how the storm is looking right now. Lots and lots more convection compared to what we were looking at yesterday, when it was barely a shell of a storm, really. Massive amounts over the center of the storm, which is buried underneath all of that convective flow, and quite a large area of convection as well when you look at it there, considering the time of year. Usually when we look at November storms, they're quite small systems that generate in the Gulf, in the Caribbean Sea, and sometimes end up in the Gulf. But this one, of course, forming in the Atlantic, is definitely going to be a much bigger scenario that we're looking at. You can see it there compared with the US East Coast. It is a fairly large storm, and it will get much larger. Its influence extends all the way over the Atlantic towards the eastern side there, some of those very outer little fringes that are attached to the storm. And taking a look towards its track there, a southwestward jog a little bit, and then sweeping round northwestwards and then towards the northeast. That looks like an eastward projection there. I think the actual forecast takes it a little bit further west after it moves inland and almost reaches the west coast, but not quite on the National Hurricane Center's forecast. Another look at the visible infrared hybrid imagery there shows you that Nicole is on an intensification trend and is likely to reach hurricane status before it reaches Florida tomorrow night.